Example 5. For a data set of brain volumes in cubic centimeters and IQ scores of 6 males, the linear correlation coefficient is R, which is equal to 0.111. We're going to use the table available below to find the critical values of R. Based on a comparison of the linear correlation coefficient R and the critical values, what do you conclude about a linear correlation? So the first thing we need to do is we need to consider the critical values from the table as being both positive and negative. So what do we know? We need to determine how many, what is the total data in our problem. So the total data that's in our problem is the following. We know that there are 6 males. So since there are 6 males or 6 pieces of data in this particular question, that tells us that we're going to use the table to identify the critical values for n males. So because n is equal to 6, now we're going to come down here and look at the number of pairs of data in n, which is 6. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we want to determine what is the critical values that are associated with that. So the critical value of R, if we look to the right, is 0.811. So the critical values are going to be negative 0.811 and positive 0.811. So now that we've drawn this graph, now what we want to do is now we want to label it. Okay, so this critical value is going to be negative 0.811, and over to the right is going to be positive 0.811. Okay, and so now we know what the critical values are. We know that we have 0. We know that in between negative 0.811 and negative 1, that would be where the correlation exists. Okay, and over here we have 0.811, and to the right of that, up to 1, is going to be the correlation. And then anything in between is going to be no correlation. So now let's go back and figure out what R represents up here. Well, if you notice, what does the value of R represent? Well, the value of R represents 0.111. Okay, so technically, where does this number lie? Okay, well, we can see here that that 0.111 is not necessarily in that arrow. It's probably closer to here. Okay, and so that means that 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 linear correlation coefficient of 0.111, okay, falls in the middle. And since it falls in the middle, then that tells us that there's no correlation. So again, here we state the sentence. Since the correlation coefficient is between the critical values, there is not sufficient evidence to support the claim of a linear correlation.